In this episode of Grief in Common, we mention anxiety and death throughout. For mental health support, please visit mind.org.uk, and for grief support, please visit winstonswish.org. Hello. Hi everyone, welcome to the next instalment of the Grief in Common podcast. I'm Grace. You might have heard me on episode 3 talking about my dad who died when I was 8 years old. And today I'm joined with Nell.
Hello. Hi. I'm Nell. You might have heard me on episode 5 of this podcast. And I am in association with Winston because my sister passed away in May 2022.
Today we're going to be talking a little bit about grief and travelling and being away from home and what that feels like, what it looks like. I've just got back from 12 weeks in California. I know, Nell, you did a bit of travelling, didn't you?
I did, yes. So I did Southeast Asia. In fact, it was like a year ago now. I was there for 9 weeks.
How did you find the taking off, the going?
I think I was so excited. Like, I was so ready to go away. I'd been at university and it had only been, 3-4 months since my sister had passed. So I was like on the run. I was like, I'm getting away from home. So I was actually not that like worried about leaving my family. Like, I was quite happy. I was like, see ya, kind of happy to go. I wanted to travel for years. COVID had kind of messed up my plans. And so I finally was like, right, I'm free. I'm done with uni. I can go. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt. What about yourself?
I was a bit of both. I was very excited to go and experience something new. I was also very nervous because it's the longest I would have been away from my mum, so it's just me and my mum at home. I was nervous about leaving her because we literally do everything together. We're like a little duo, so
yeah.
But the excitement of like a new adventure was was definitely the overriding emotion. I was going to somewhere where I knew the people I was going, so I knew it wasn't too. It wasn't going to be too out of this world,
Yeah.
I think I was more apprehensive, before I was going, and then as soon as I was on the plane, I was like, nah, I'm going to be fine.
You'll be okay. Who did you go with, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, I went on my own, and then I stayed with a cousin, and I was nannying with her 2 little babies.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I was looking after 2 lovely little girls for the summer. And then got to experience so many cool things.
That's so cool.
Did anything come up for you while you were travelling? Anything?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I feel like I have, well, maybe it's not that uncommon, but for me, I felt like I was the only one who felt this way when I was there. But having come back and spoken to some of my friends, they were like, oh, I felt like that too. Like, don't worry. I'd say the first 2 weeks was fun, was good. Everything was all right, but then slowly, I started to get really bad anxiety. I went with my boyfriend and we hadn't travelled together before. And, there's always the nerves that you're going to fall out or something. And he was actually great. He was so supportive with me, but I was not wanting to leave the hotel room some of the days. I wasn't wanting to go and do the tours. I just wanted to be the most comfortable possible, and that to me the safest was in the hotel room watching Netflix. I had not necessarily all a bad experience traveling. I'm glad I went. I don't regret going because I think it's taught me a lot about my grief actually, but
yeah,
overall my traveling experience I would say was fairly negative actually, which I thought was kind of fairly uncommon. Obviously, it wasn't the whole time really negative. For me, it went in waves. Some days I was fine. Some days I wasn't so good. Some days I was trying to book a plane home.
Yeah.
What about yourself? Did you kind of have any of these, or were you kind of all up? Or
I think for me, it started off quite down, and I just went up because I went at the start of summer. So it was Father's Day the first weekend that I got there.
Right.
And then it was my dad's anniversary a week later. So the first 2 weeks were okay, I'm doing this on my own.
Yeah.
I've either always had my mum or I've always had my family. And it was no, I'm going somewhere where I'm just going to have to deal with this on my own.
Right.
The family were great. Like, they were really supportive, but they like didn't know how I felt because they hadn't experienced that grief. So we actually went away for Father's Day weekend, and it was all like, oh, happy Father's Day, and like we were with loads of dads, and like watching the two little girls with their dad really, really made me emotional.
I bet.
It was like, I can remember times like that with my dad, and I was really like, okay, I'm going to be okay. It's all right if you want to have a cry. You've not stopped yourself from having a cry before, so don't start now. For my dad's anniversary, it was actually the eldest one's birthday on my dad's anniversary. So that was very like, put on a brave face, smile, happy birthday.
Having a very different kind of celebration on that day must have felt very odd, if you know what I mean. Like,
it was a real like juxtaposition. We have this tradition that like any anniversary or like my dad's birthday or whatever, we have a curry because that was our favourite meal. So I introduced my American family to a chicken biryani.
oh, amazing.
My proudest moment is
Game changer.
yeah, I got them to eat chicken biryani, masala sauce and a garlic naan, which is what I have like every time. It was really nice because they were like, we really want to do this for you, and like we know this is really important and like part of your tradition. So like when we were sat at the table, we were like, happy birthday. And we did a toast to my dad as well. And it was like, we were explaining to the girls how this is like something that we do in my family at home. And it felt really lovely because I felt really supported in just like a totally normal way. It wasn't like OTT and like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Or like, I felt like if I had a cry, it would have been fine. And it was also like the third year in a row that I hadn't been with my mum for my dad's anniversary. So,
Oh, okay. So it wasn't the first time you'd been away from her.
yeah. So it was quite like, okay, I've done this before on my own. I just hope my mum's okay.
Yeah.
I think one thing that just really played on it was like seeing the girls with their dad.
Yeah.
Because he was such a like loving dad with them, like my dad was.
Mm.
It brought back a lot of like memories and a lot of like jealousy, because it was like, I don't have that now, and I'm never gonna have that again, and that made me quite emotional. But there was times when I'd just look at them and start crying, and they were like, "You're right," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just having a minute. You're fine."
Just having a minute.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was going to ask. Did you feel comfortable kind of like showing your emotions with them and with these people who aren't complete strangers, but they're not your immediate family?
I've always been open with my grief. I mean, it's been 14 years for me this year. Everyone knows I'm going to have a little cry. Like, all my friends know what I'm like. My family know what I'm like. And I think I've just carried that through, that I'm always going to be open. So I did take myself off for my 5 minutes. Sometimes when you're so in it, like dealing with a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old is not always
That's young, right? Yeah.
it's not always what I wanted. So I'd take myself off for 5 minutes, but the family was so good, and I was just like, I just need a hug, and I'm just gonna have a little cry. And they were great, and I was really open with them, and was like, I told them about being part of Winston's Wish and like doing this podcast, and I think they knew that like it's such a massive part of my life, that is part of who I am. So showing my emotion was really like, I didn't feel hesitant at all.
It was, I'm trying to think of the date, only a few days before I was coming home, which by that point in the trip I was ready to come home. It was my sister's birthday. And so obviously it had only been about 6 months by that point. And so this was the first date, anniversary, whatever you want to call it, kind of first milestone we had. And to be honest, I cannot even say what I did on the day, because it was all just sort of, we were up and doing things almost every day, or going to the beach. I remember messaging my dad in the morning, kind of checking that he was okay. But there was actually a part of me that was very glad to not be with my family, which sounds strange, but I think because I was still in that very much like avoidance territory, I didn't feel that I could cope being with my family on the first ever sort of milestone, if that makes sense. And my sister has a son, so for him they were spending time with him, so my nephew, and kind of having a celebration for him, a lot of it. And I was like, I cannot cope with that. No, I cannot be involved with that. Now, a year and a bit in, I think I can, but the thought of it back then, I was like, I'm so glad I'm not with my family right now, which, I don't know, it sounds terrible, but I think a lot of people share that same feeling, like when they're very new in their kind of grief journey, if you'll call it. Yeah. I didn't do any sort of special celebration or anything like that. And I think that was okay. Like, there was a part of me when I got back, I thought, oh gosh, is that really bad? Should I have done?
I think it's about taking space, isn't it, to navigate what you want to do, where you're going to be. Can you tell us a bit about how it feels now? I mean, you're nearly a year later.
Yeah, so I had the year anniversary back in May, and that was very different. I made like a big thing of the day. I'd planned it for like months before. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this and that, do like little traditions that I would have done with my sister. I was living up north at the time, so I was, again, away from my family, so not with any of them. I was with my boyfriend again. We survived the travels. So we were together and we just kind of spent a day together. And in fact, it was the day of the king's coronation. So I went into town and there was like loads of celebration and loads of stuff going on. And I was we did a bit out in town, and then sort of afterwards I was like, okay, we can come home now. I want to just kind of be in my own little safe place. But now I feel a bit more like with it in November, it will be her birthday. And I think now I feel like I'm a bit more equipped to spend time with my family and to spend time with my nephew and stuff like that. Because that's the thing that out of all the family members I struggle most with, it's with my nephew, because it's just heartbreaking because he's very young. But actually being through Winston's Wish and meeting lots of people who were almost like him, kind of growing up, it sort of made me a lot more, I don't know, like I know the way we should be talking about my sister around him, whereas I used to sort of avoid it, and now I'm a lot more comfortable. But yeah, that was sorry, I feel like I went on a big rant there.
That's okay. No, I think it's really helpful to hear, like, I don't want to say full circle moment, because you might not feel like you've come full circle, but it's really like great to hear that, you know, you're at a different place and how that evolves. Like, a year is quite a short period of time in terms of grief, because now we're grieving forever. You talked a bit about when you were coming home from travelling. Do you think you were ready to come home after being away?
Yes. So as I said before, like, because I had very bad anxiety like throughout the trip, there were different milestones in my trip that I was like, I want to come home. I just want to come home now. But it was once I got home that I realised, oh, I get it. I was completely running. Like, that's why I went through all of this big like swoop of anxiety, because I was worried that something was going to happen to myself, to my boyfriend, or to family back home. So I was definitely ready to come home when I did, and I was excited to come home, and I was excited to see my family again and kind of get back into a routine. I think routine has helped me with my own mental health, and you don't have any routine when you're traveling like that. You don't have any stability, whereas I very much like stability. I like having my routine, getting up at the same time, having control over what I'm eating, like stuff like that. So I was definitely excited to come home. What about yourself though? Because I feel like you've had a very different travelling experience to what I did.
I had booked my flight home, so I knew the date I was coming home. If it had worked out with visas and stuff, I could have stayed. But I think as it was like getting closer to no, you're flying home, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go home now. Have my crumpets, have my cup of tea, a bit of cold weather.
the Brit was coming out of you.
Yeah, the British, like, people that don't speak to you, which I really like. I had such an amazing experience, and I fell in love with the girls, and like I loved looking after them, and I loved being part of that, family life. It was very much like at home. I don't sit in my room. If I'm at home, I'm downstairs with my mum, or I'm cooking with my mum. And it was really nice to like have that parallel there, because it was like, okay, I'd looked after the girls for the day. That's it. I'm done. No, it wasn't. It was like, oh, I can chill with their mum, and I can, cook dinner, and it was really nice to have those parallels. But I think once I knew that my flight, like, it was happening, I was getting on that flight, I was like, I can't wait to see my mum, and I can't wait to see my best friend, because my best friend was picking me up from the airport. So,
oh, that's nice. How did you find saying goodbye to like a whole family out there? Because for me, like, I was just saying goodbye to the country. We hadn't really made any friends out there. It was just me and my boyfriend coming back together. Whereas for you, you had to kind of say goodbye to a group of people that you just spent a load of your time with.
I cried my eyes out.
Did you?
I cried my eyes out at the airport. I was flying from LAX, which is like the busiest airport I've ever been to. And it was very much like, okay, we're dropping you off, but you have to be really speedy because you need to get in. And like, the girls were asleep, which I actually think was a good thing, because otherwise I would have just been even worse. And it felt really like I left a piece of me with them, because I'd spent 3 months watching these girls like grow up, basically.
Yeah.
Little one went from saying like 2 words to walking around saying hiya babe, that I taught her, around the house. Like, I hope that they remember me, because I'll always remember them. And like, watching them grow and nurture them was like a massive experience.
Oh, that's so sweet. It's such a special experience that you got to do and be part of like a completely different family dynamic as well, and kind of being involved with watching little ones grow. Like, I've grown up with lots of little kids in my family, and I love it. I've got a little sister, and it was a similar thing for me. My little sister came with my mum to come pick me up from the airport, and I was like, oh my gosh, you've got so big, like, this is crazy. Yeah.
So Nell, you mentioned about anxiety coming up while you were travelling, and that was quite unexpected. Can you expand a bit more?
Yeah, so I mentioned some of this in episode 5 that I was in with Ghislaine. We were talking about anxiety and kind of whether I'd had it before. And I'd say it's a bit of both. I think throughout my childhood and teenage years, and then going into uni, I definitely had waves of anxiety, but I wasn't as self-aware, if I'll put it like that, back then, to kind of acknowledge that these are traits of anxiety. So I think when I went away, I'd been living at uni. I then moved home for like a week, literally, not very long, and then I went traveling. My sister had passed away while I was at uni. I was in my uni house when I found out. I kind of wanted to stay at uni. I didn't really want to go home after finding out, sort of thing. So for me, then I continued to stay at university. That was like my safe place. I went home for like a week, which was kind of a bit odd, but because I was so excited about going traveling, like, that's all I was focused on. I was just like, okay, pack my bag, get this, buy this, whatever. And then went there and was disheartened, disappointed, because I was like, oh no, not these weird feelings again that I've had a few years back. Kind of, what is this? Why am I feeling this kind of way? And I think, yeah, when things that I would have associated with like a happy place or a safe place back home, like a beach setting, I love the beach, now suddenly it was not a good place. So that was like very odd, not just throughout traveling, but also what I learned through just this last year and a bit of grieving, reactions to grief that I was not expecting, because I feel like I'd only seen the like grief portrayed through like films, and watching, someone lose their husband in a rom-com and they're crying and they break down on the floor, and then if I didn't do the things I saw them doing, I feel like I was grieving wrong, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for example, like I call them grief dreams and grief nightmares. A grief dream to me is when the person you've lost appears in a dream.
Yeah.
And that can be really weird, because you wake up and you're like, you have to go through the whole process again. I'm like, no, they're not here, they're not coming back, but it felt so real. You want to go back to sleep. Grief nightmare to me is when you have a dream, not necessarily about the person who's passed away, but about other family members, loved ones who may pass away.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, it's funny you say about dreams because I very, very rarely dream about my dad. I've had 2 really horrible ones, which were like, I woke up and was like, it was the day my mum had told me my dad had died all over again, like that.
Yeah.
It's really weird because always in my dream, it's like, I can't get to him. So it's like my brain knows that he's not here. So it's like, I can't reach for you or touch you or like be close to him in my dreams. It normally happens when I'm really upset about something else. Like if something's getting me down, like work or a friend, like something's happened in a friendship, or like my brain is like not focused on him.
Yeah.
It's like he pops up in my dream.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's comforting, but every time I just can't touch him. So I'm like, I want to like go to you, but I can't. That's why like I can remember every dream I've had about him, because in like 14 years I've only had like 4. So
wow, okay.
It's really, it brings up a lot of emotion when you wake up. I know what you mean about when you wake up and you like want to go back to sleep, but you feel weird. I think something that unexpected for me was like my attachment to things. I get like really attached to like people and places. When my best friend left for uni, you know, and I didn't go to uni, I nearly had a crisis. I was like, oh my gosh, you're going to uni, you're going to make new friends and you're going to forget all about me, and that's it. And I was like, you know, I'd message like, are you having a great time? And like, I was so excited for her, but like deep down, I was like, oh my gosh, she's like never going to want to see me again, and she's going to make all these friends. And I was like, no, you make the effort, she makes the effort. We pull through for each other every time. So, and like you were saying about the beach, I have, my family went to the same place on holiday every summer, a place in Spain, which was right on the beach. And I actually have a tattoo of it, so it's always with me. But my mum went for 3 weeks while I was in America.
Oh, right, okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm in California, but I really want to be there. Not just because my mum was there, but because like I wanted to be in that place. And I was like, I don't even care that I'm in California right now. I could be in like Timbuktu. All I want to do is be in that space.
Yeah.
I feel so connected to my dad when I'm in that area. I get there and I just go, okay. And while my mum was there in the summer, I really struggled because I was like, I almost like didn't want to speak to her because I knew she was there, but I also like did want to speak to her because I wanted to see it. Mum was like, Grace, you're in California. And I was like, yeah, but I want to be in Spain.
It doesn't matter where I am, I want to be there, yeah.
Because I just felt so like, we try and go every year. Like, I don't have a grave for my dad, so this is almost like his place. And for me, it's where I connect to him the most. And I was like, this year I don't get to do that. And thinking about it now, that's why I was so upset. Not because my mum was there and I wasn't there, but it was because I'd missed out on that moment of connection. So yeah, unexpected things like that pop up, like that I didn't realise I was so attached to things and like things like that.
Did you call home quite a lot when you were away, or did you?
Yeah, I tried really hard. I think I wanted to speak to my mum a bit more than she wanted to speak to me. But I think that's because I was like, I'm away so I can speak to her. But I think because once she got home, she was like, it reminded her that I was away if she was speaking to me. I think she was going through like periods of time where she was like, oh, I'm doing okay, like, it's fine. And then she'd speak to me and like, it'd always be really emotional, especially with like towards me coming home. She was really...
kind of counting down the days.
Yeah. And I spoke to my friends quite a lot. And because I was doing really exciting things, like they all wanted to hear what I was getting up to, which was really nice. The time difference actually wasn't awful. So it was like there was time to speak. But yeah, I did ring home a lot. I've always done that though. I went to Spain for 6 weeks last summer on my own. And I think I spoke to my mum like every other day.
Oh, that's nice.
What about you? Were you in contact with home?
I'm trying to remember now. I feel like at the beginning I didn't, because I felt really bad for the fact that I felt really anxious and didn't want to be there and wanted to come home. I think at the time I felt a lot of like shame around it. So at the very beginning I was sort of like, I do the WhatsApp group chat. We made a big one with all my family members. So it was kind of, oh, we're going on these nice trips. Oh, we saw an elephant today, saw a temple, those kind of things. My family had supported me, and it had been my birthday just before I'd been away. So a lot of people had contributed money to me to go on this trip. And I was just there like, I just want to come home. I don't like the food. I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't like this. I don't like that. Like, I just want to be in my own safe place. And I was then in my head going, oh, what a waste. Like, my family are going to think I'm so like selfish and spoiled. But eventually, once I did kind of speak to my mum and I was like, I'm really having a bad time and I want to come home, she kind of, okay, let's discuss that. If we come home, right, can we book a flight? And if so, and what else will you be missing out? And kind of rationalised it a bit more. And I felt a lot more like free once I'd kind of said about it, because then when I got home, she'd kind of told some of my family, so it wasn't like, oh, Nell, how was the trip, oh my god, because that was what I struggled with. And you come home, everyone's asking, oh, that must be amazing, what are you doing? And I filmed those TikTok videos out there, so I had even more people who just even following me were like, oh my gosh, where, like, this is so exciting, you're so lucky, like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, would you recommend traveling to me? And I was like, no, it was rubbish. Like, but I had my friend recently went traveling off of some heartbreak, and she came back and we were talking the other day, and I was like, it doesn't fix everything, does it? And she was like, no, it sucks, it doesn't fix everything. And I was like, I know, who would have taught us that? Like, I wish someone said, you could go have fun, but it's not going to fix all your issues. When you come back, it's just going to be like, they're going to come back with you. To be honest, my social media, I think, actually made me make the most of my trip, because in my head I was like, if for nothing else, I'm just going to get a cool video for TikTok. And that sounds terrible. That sounds awful. But it was like the one thing that I was like, right, we're going to try this exciting food and we're going to go on this long walk. And it actually made me, I started talking about it a lot more on my social media. And once that sort of facade had gone, no more, oh my god, traveling's amazing, yeah, everyone should do it, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, to it's really fun but I'm kind of having a bit of a hard time. Then other people would connect with me, but like, oh my gosh, I felt like this too, thank you so much for sharing. My family friends were like, oh, okay, like, and then I would some of them wouldn't know necessarily about my sister, so I'd be like, oh well, I lost my sister this time last year, and they straight away are like, oh, I get it, like, and then that's kind of for me when I went, oh yeah, maybe that's why. Yeah. Maybe it's all linked. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So like hear your story and hear, how ours differ and how they're similar and stuff. Thank you.
Do you want to do any more travelling in the future?
Oh yeah, I'd love to get away. I don't know, I think I'm a Sagittarius, so I don't really believe in horoscopes, but apparently I like travelling, which is quite true. So I try and go to Spain every summer. I'd love to like go and do a bit more of Europe as well. I think like I did Egypt on my own last year for 9 days.
Wow.
And that was my first proper trip where I had to like get to the airport by myself, get to the hotel by myself, get myself home. Like, it was like, you're on your own. There's no one to sort you out. So after doing that, I was like, yeah, I can do anything.
I mean, I can conquer the world.
I can do it all. I'm an extrovert, so I love doing it with people. Like, I'd love to go away with friends. My mum's really good at, like, we love doing all the same kind of stuff. So I'm like, Mum, just come with me. Like, let's go and have adventures. So I think for me, travelling is like, I like that escape, and I like that I know that I can go away and get some sunshine, and then I can come home and have the comforts of, my bed and the rain and English people.
A roast dinner.
Yeah, What about you after your experience?
Yeah, I kind of, now looking back at it, I don't think I'd do anything as intense as I did before. I think 2.5 months for me was too much. I think I want to do some trips with my friends, because obviously I've done with my boyfriend, but I haven't really done any with my friends. But I think I will do more short stays. Europe, definitely, like max 2 weeks somewhere. I'm a girl of habit and a girl of routine, and if it messes with that too much, I think I will start like sabotaging the trip in my head, if that makes sense. Did you find when you went away to any of these places, because you're like Miss Worldwide, do you ever take anything to like remind you of home, or remind you specifically of your dad, or do you do anything like that?
I always take my pillow that I sleep with every night. That is just like a home comfort for me. Like, I know if I've got that, it's like, okay, I've got something. In terms of like my dad, I have a tattoo for my dad. I don't really take anything with me. I have lots of pictures on my phone. I also have a ring with my dad's ashes in, so I always have that. But in terms of like pictures and stuff, that it all like stays in my room. And I feel like it's all in my head, so like, and it all depends on the place. Like if I'm going to Spain, I don't need it because I know that place encompasses everything of my dad. Like I didn't take anything with me when I went to America. I actually thought about it. I was like, oh, I could like put this photo in and stuff. And then I was like, I have all these photos on my phone. Really blessed that I have a voice recording of my dad on my phone. And he's always in my head. So, and like I can shut my eyes now and see, like, I can see him smiling, you know, it's things like that. So I think for me, I felt comforted in that I've got it all with me anyway. What about you?
Yeah, similar, really. I didn't take anything. I think when I did the big travels, obviously, I think I was scared of I didn't even take like a laptop with me or anything like that, like just in fear that I would lose it. So, but similar, like I have stuff on my phone, which I can kind of always go back to. I want to get a tattoo for my sister, and I think that will be I'm just being picky because it's going to be such a big, special thing for me that I'm like, I want it to be with the right person. I want it to be the right thing. And I'm still kind of thinking about what I want that to be. But I think that for me would be like a way that I can kind of carry her with me throughout life. And I also think sort of through the actions that you do, like there was a part of me while I was traveling which thought, oh, she would have really loved the fact I was away right now. Like she would have loved the fact I would have gone and done this, and experienced cool things and eaten new food and seen things and looked at fake designer handbags. That would definitely be what she would have done. So I think I found connection through her, through the activities and things that I did end up doing, and rather than a physical thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks, Nell. It's been so nice chatting.
It's been lovely. I love these podcasts. They're great.
I love it too.
Thank you for sharing, and it's really interesting to hear very different sides of travelling.
Thanks so much for joining me now, and thanks so much for listening to the Grief in Common podcast. See you next time.
Grief in Common is a podcast run by the Winston's Wish Youth team. The topics of conversation aim to provide comfort and make a difference to other young grieving people over the age of 13.
We hope to give listeners the confidence to talk about their own grief journey. It's rare to be able to listen to other young people being open and honest about their grief and how they're feeling.
We hope this podcast reaches young grieving people everywhere and helps them to feel less alone.
From teenagers to young adults, students to professionals, we're all different, but we've all got grief in common.
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thank you.